The Sapphire Secret, Chapter 1, A Glimpse of Blue. Sarah Jenkins, at 73, believed she knew every thread in the tapestry of her family. A proud matriarch, her life in the quiet, tree-lined suburbs of Richmond, Virginia, revolved around her daughter, Emily, and Emily's vibrant, growing family. Their lineage, a robust line of strong-willed, dark-haired, and invariably brown-eyed individuals, was a point of quiet pride for Sarah. Generation after generation, the same warm, earthy gaze looked back from old photographs, a comforting constancy. So, when her granddaughter Lily was born, Sarah naturally expected to see the familiar shade. Emily, her face glowing with the exhaustion and elation of new motherhood, had held the tiny bundle close. Sarah leaned over the bassinet in the hospital room, a soft coo escaping her lips. Lily was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a sweet rosebud mouth. And then Sarah's gaze fell to the baby's eyes. Instead of the rich, deep brown that was a hallmark of their family, Lily's eyes were a startling, ethereal sapphire blue, a piercing, almost translucent blue that seemed to hold the distant light of the ocean. Sarah blinked, then blinked again. Her heart gave a curious little lurch. "Oh, Emily," she murmured, her voice laced with a confusion she struggled to mask. She's beautiful." And those eyes. Emily, still in a euphoric haze, beamed. "Aren't they? So unusual. Neither David nor I have blue eyes, or anyone in his family for that matter." "A genetic marvel," the doctor said. David, Emily's husband, a jovial man with kind brown eyes, chuckled from beside the bed. "A little alien, maybe, but our alien." Sarah offered a weak smile, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Genetic marvel, perhaps, but it felt unsettling. In her family, the brown eyes were a given, a foundational truth. Her own eyes were a deep, almost black brown. Emily's, a warm hazel brown. Her late husband, Robert, had the same deep brown. Her parents, her grandparents. As far back as her memory stretched, and as far as the faded sepia photographs confirmed, the Jenkins family had always had brown eyes. Always. The unexpected blue felt like a crack in a perfectly laid foundation. It wasn't just a shade. It was a silent question. Where did they come from? Over the next few weeks, as Lily grew, her sapphire eyes remained a vivid, undeniable splash of unexpected color. Every time Sarah looked into them, a faint, disquieting whisper brushed the edges of her mind, a flicker of an old memory, a half-forgotten story, something just out of reach. She'd dismiss it as the oddity of genetics, the randomness of life. But the whisper persisted, a quiet hum beneath the surface of her contentment. One afternoon, sorting through a box of old family photos in her attic, a task she'd put off for years, Sarah found it, a small, tarnished silver locket, tucked away beneath a stack of brittle, yellowed letters. It belonged to her grandmother, Eliza Jenkins, a woman of quiet strength and deep brown eyes who had died when Sarah was only 10. Sarah remembered her grandmother always wearing it, always keeping it closed. She had been told it held a lock of hair from a beloved pet. Curiosity, sparked by Lily's blue eyes, prompted her to open it. The clasp was stiff, resisting at first, then yielded with a faint click. Inside, nestled against faded velvet, was not a lock of pet hair, but a tiny, intricately folded piece of paper, and a miniature, sepia-toned photograph. Sarah's fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. It was a fragment of a letter written in a delicate, unfamiliar hand. The ink was faded, but a single sentence stood out, stark and unsettling. His eyes, my dearest Eliza, are the exact shade of the summer sky, just like mine. Sarah frowned, her gaze shifting to the tiny photograph. It was a man, young, handsome, with a kind smile. And his eyes, even in the faded sepia, were undeniably, breathtakingly blue. The very same sapphire blue as Lily's. A cold dread seeped into Sarah's bones. This wasn't a pet. This was a secret. Her grandmother, Eliza Jenkins, a woman of unwavering integrity, had kept a profound secret. A secret involving a man with blue eyes. A secret carefully hidden behind a closed locket and a family narrative of uninterrupted brown eyes. The whisper in her mind intensified, growing into a clamor. It wasn't just an oddity of genetics. It was an echo from the past, a silent story waiting to be told. And Lily's blue eyes were the key that had unlocked it. Sarah felt a chilling certainty. The appearance of Lily's blue eyes was not random. It was a sign that the past, long buried, was finally demanding to be seen. Chapter 2. The Whispers of a Hidden Past. The locket felt heavy in Sarah's hand, a tangible link to a past she hadn't known existed. The faded photograph of the blue-eyed man, the cryptic fragment of a letter. His eyes, my dearest Eliza, are the exact shade of the summer sky, just like mine, sent shivers down her spine. Her grandmother, Eliza, a woman of unshakable rectitude, had kept a secret that contradicted the very essence of the Jenkins family narrative. Sarah spent the next few days in a daze, Lily's piercing blue eyes a constant, unsettling reminder. She examined old family albums, scrutinizing every face, every faded photograph, searching for any hint of blue. There was none. Generations of solemn, brown-eyed gazes stared back at her, deepening the mystery. It was as if this blue-eyed man, this his, had been meticulously scrubbed from their visual history. The fragment of the letter consumed her thoughts. My dearest Eliza, who had written it? The handwriting was elegant, refined, yet unfamiliar, and, just like mine, implied the writer also had blue eyes. Was this man the father of one of her brown-eyed ancestors? How could blue eyes have seemingly vanished for generations, only to resurface now, so vividly, in Lily? Unless the lineage wasn't as straightforward as she believed. A deep-seated intuition, cold and insistent, told her this wasn't just a hidden romance. This felt like a deeper secret, something profoundly disruptive to the established family history. Her grandmother, Eliza, had been married to Edward Jenkins, a man whose stern, brown-eyed gaze dominated many of the earliest family photos. Their marriage was presented as solid, enduring, the foundation of their family tree. But the locket whispered of a different truth. Sarah decided to confide in Emily. Emily, ever the pragmatist, might offer a fresh perspective. She laid out the locket, the photograph, the letter fragment on the kitchen table. Her voice hushed as she recounted the discovery. Emily picked up the locket, her brow furrowed. Wow, Mom, this is something. This man, he's not in any of our family photos. And these eyes, they're exactly Lily's shade. It's almost spooky. She read the letter fragment aloud. His eyes, just like mine. So he had blue eyes too. Who was he? That's what I'm trying to figure out, honey, Sarah sighed, running a hand through her silver hair. Grandma Eliza never spoke of anyone like this. She was so proper, so devoted to Grandpa Edward. This just doesn't fit. Emily, always quick to connect the dots, suddenly looked up, her eyes wide. Mom, could this man have been Lily's great-great-grandfather? From Grandma Eliza's time? And if he wasn't Grandpa Edward, then who was? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air, chilling them both. The possibility of a secret, illegitimate line. It was scandalous, unsettling, but it explained the blue eyes. The idea was shocking, yet it felt strangely right. It explained the blue eyes, their sudden, unexpected reemergence. It explained the hidden locket, the secrecy. But it also threw into question everything Sarah thought she knew about her family, about her lineage, about who she truly was. The Jenkins family pride, built on generations of solid, predictable brown eyes, felt suddenly fragile. Sarah remembered snippets of family gossip she'd dismissed as idle chatter in her youth. Whispers about Eliza's difficult period after her mother's death, when she had spent a year away from their Virginia hometown, staying with distant relatives in a small, isolated community in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. It had always been vague, brushed aside as a time of grief and recovery, but now it resonated with a new, ominous meaning. A year away, a secret lover, a hidden child? Driven by a desperate need for answers, Sarah began to research. She started with old census records, searching for Eliza Jenkins's whereabouts in 1900-1901, the period of her supposed sabbatical. It was painstaking work, hours spent poring over digitized documents, microfilmed records, and obscure local histories. She found it, a faded, handwritten entry in the 1900 U.S. Census for a tiny remote logging town called Whisper Creek, West Virginia. Among the list of residents in a boarding house, alongside a family of distant cousins she vaguely recognized, was Eliza Jenkins, age 18, visiting. And listed directly below her as a boarder was Nathaniel Thorne, age 22, logger. Sarah's heart hammered. Nathaniel Thorne. She searched for more. A local newspaper archive, digitalized and made available online by a small historical society in the nearest town, held a few more clues. A sparse social column mention of young Mr. Nathaniel Thorne, known for his piercing blue eyes, joining the logging camp. A small obituary, 2 years later, for Nathaniel Thorne, tragically lost in a timber accident. He had blue eyes. He was in the same remote town as Eliza during her mysterious year away. He died tragically. It all began to coalesce into a heartbreaking, plausible narrative. Eliza, away from the scrutiny of her hometown, during a period of grief and vulnerability, had fallen in love with Nathaniel Thorne, the blue-eyed logger. A brief, passionate affair. An unexpected pregnancy. The birth of a child whose eyes, like Nathaniel's, were the color of the summer sky. But what happened to the child? Why no mention? Why the secrecy? And how did the brown eyes return for generations? Unless... Sarah looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her crib, her blue eyes closed, long lashes fanned against her rosy cheeks. The blue eyes were a generational echo, a sapphire secret stretching back to the mountains of West Virginia, hidden for over a century. The truth, if she could uncover it, would rewrite her family's entire history, and she felt an undeniable, almost desperate need to find the final pieces of this long-buried puzzle. Chapter 3. The Secret in the Sepia. The name, Nathaniel Thorne, now burned into Sarah's mind, felt like a gateway to a lost world. Whisper Creek, West Virginia. A remote logging town, a secret love, a tragic death, and a child. But what child? And where did the brown eyes come from? The answers, she instinctively knew, lay deeper, within the silent, unyielding archives of family. She returned to the box of her grandmother Eliza's belongings, now with a renewed, almost desperate focus. The locket had been a key. What else had Eliza hidden? Tucked deep beneath bundles of yellowed lace and brittle postcards, she found it. Not a letter, but a small, worn, leather-bound photo album, even older than the locket. It was unlabeled, almost purposefully disguised, blending in with the other mundane keepsakes. Sarah opened it, her hands trembling. The first pages held faded, sepia portraits of strangers, faces she didn't recognize, loggers, stern mountain women, children with serious eyes. It was a world utterly alien to the genteel Virginia life she associated with Eliza. Then, on a page near the middle, a photo that made her gasp. A young Eliza, barely recognizable, her face softer, younger than any image Sarah had seen. She was standing next to Nathaniel Thorne, his arm casually around her waist, his blue eyes startling even in sepia. They were clearly in love. And in Eliza's arms, wrapped in a simple cloth, was a baby, a tiny, cherubic infant. Sarah's breath hitched. Lily's blue eyes had finally found their source. This was the child, but who was it? The photograph was undated, no names written beneath it. Just Eliza, Nathaniel, and the baby. She continued turning pages, each one a whispered revelation. Photos of Nathaniel and the baby. Nathaniel teaching the baby to walk. Nathaniel proud and beaming, holding the baby. Always the blue-eyed man and the baby. Never Eliza alone with the child. It was as if Nathaniel was the sole parent, or at least the primary caregiver, in those early months. And then the album changed. The photographs became starker, more solemn. A single portrait of Eliza, alone, her face etched with a profound grief. Then, a photograph of a small wooden grave marker. The name was carved simply, Nathaniel Thorne, 1878-1902, beloved. The date confirming the newspaper obituary. After that, the photos changed again. More distant, more formal. Images of Eliza back in Virginia, standing beside Edward Jenkins, her future husband. And then, a picture of a little boy, no older than 2, with startlingly brown eyes. He was standing with Edward and Eliza, and the caption in Eliza's neat script simply read, "Our Edward Jr." Sarah felt a cold, hard knot of understanding clench in her stomach. Edward Jr., her great-grandfather, the unquestioned brown-eyed ancestor who had carried on the Jenkins family line. But if the baby with Nathaniel Thorne had blue eyes and Edward Jr. had brown eyes, they couldn't be the same child. A terrible, heartbreaking possibility began to dawn. Eliza had left Whisper Creek. She had left Nathaniel, perhaps before his death, or after his death, and she had left their blue-eyed child. She had come back to Virginia, married Edward Jenkins, and had his brown-eyed son. But why? Why abandon her first child? It seemed unthinkable. Unless she couldn't bring a child with blue eyes, a living testament to her secret, back into her conservative Virginia world. Unless the social stigma, the fear of scandal, was too great. Sarah continued turning pages, desperate for answers. The last few pages of the album were filled with notes, written in Eliza's hand, small, cramped, as if she feared discovery. November 15th, 1902. Whisper Creek. Nathaniel is gone. My heart is shattered. Our precious boy, little Thomas, is all I have left of him. But I cannot bring him back to Virginia. Not with his eyes, not with my shame. Edward has offered to marry me. He's a good man. He will give me a new life, a legitimate life. But Thomas, he must stay here. He will be raised by Eleanor Thorne, Nathaniel's sister. She's a kind woman. She loves him. She will tell him his father was a good man. She will keep our secret. She will give him a good life, a simple life, away from judgment. Sarah gasped, a silent sob escaping her. Thomas, her great-granduncle, the blue-eyed child of Eliza Jenkins and Nathaniel Thorne, left behind in a remote mountain town, raised by his aunt. This was the secret, the true origin of Lily's sapphire eyes. They were not a random genetic marvel. They were a direct lineage from Thomas, the forgotten son of Eliza. And then, a final, heartbreaking entry. October 10th, 1903, Virginia. I named our new baby Edward Jr. He has Edward's eyes, brown, like all the Jenkins. No one will ever know. Thomas, my heart aches for him, every day, but this is the only way. For the family, for honor, for survival. May God forgive me. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. Forgiveness. This wasn't a story of casual abandonment. This was a story of a young woman, trapped by the rigid social norms of her era, making an impossible, agonizing choice between her secret child and her very survival, her social standing, her future. Eliza had chosen her family's honor over her heart, a devastating sacrifice that had echoed through generations. The brown eyes of Edward Jr. had effectively covered the blue eyes for generations, an accidental genetic sleight of hand. But the gene, dormant and hidden, had passed down through the Jenkins line, waiting for the perfect confluence of recessive traits to re-emerge. And that confluence had happened in Lily. Sarah felt a profound connection to Eliza, not just as a grandmother, but as a woman who had suffered a silent, lifelong grief. The blue eyes of Lily were not just a genetic quirk. They were a living testament to a hidden love, a heartbreaking choice, and the enduring power of a secret kept for over a century. Sarah knew she had to tell Emily, and she had to find out more about Thomas. The Sapphire secret demanded to be fully uncovered. Chapter 4. The Unseen Branch of the Tree. The truth, once a fragmented puzzle, now lay before Sarah in its heartbreaking entirety. Her grandmother, Eliza, a woman she had always admired for her strength and propriety, was revealed as a figure of tragic depth, forced to make an agonizing choice between love and societal survival. The Jenkins family brown eyes were not an unbroken chain. They were a carefully constructed veil, hiding a lost branch of their family tree. Lily's sapphire gaze wasn't a genetic anomaly. It was a century-long echo, a direct visual link to a forgotten past. Sarah called Emily, her voice thick with emotion, her hands still trembling from the shock of Eliza's hidden album. She laid out the full story. Nathaniel Thorne, the blue-eyed logger, the secret love, the tragic death, and the birth of their son, Thomas. The agonizing decision to leave Thomas behind with Nathaniel's sister, Eleanor Thorne, to protect the family's honor and Eliza's future. The return to Virginia, the marriage to Edward Jenkins, the birth of Edward Jr., and the careful erasure of Thomas from their family narrative. Emily listened in stunned silence, then tears welled in her own eyes. "Mom," she whispered, her voice laced with awe and sorrow. "Grandma Eliza. She lived with that for her whole life. That kind of secret, that kind of pain. A secret passed down through silence, through generations of brown eyes, until Lily's blue eyes broke through it all," Sarah said, a profound sense of understanding settling over her. "She was an incredibly strong woman, Emily. Strong enough to make an impossible choice, and strong enough to carry that burden alone." The family tree, once seemingly so rigid and straightforward, had suddenly unfurled a previously unseen branch, blossoming with a forgotten story. Thomas Thorne, the blue-eyed son of Eliza Jenkins. He was Lily's direct ancestor, a great-great-granduncle whose lineage had unexpectedly converged with theirs after a century of separation. Their next mission was clear. They had to find out what happened to Thomas. Did he have children? Did his blue eyes continue through his line? Did a whole separate branch of the family exist, unknown to them, for over 100 years? Sarah and Emily immersed themselves in genealogical research. They contacted the Historical Society in Whisper Creek, West Virginia, the same one whose digital archives had provided Nathaniel Thorne's obituary. The society, a small, dedicated group of local historians, was thrilled to help. They unearthed dusty census records, old land deeds, and fragmented community histories. They found confirmation that Eleanor Thorne, Nathaniel's sister, had indeed raised Thomas Thorne. They discovered that Thomas had lived a quiet life as a farmer, had married a local woman named Mary, and yes, they had children. Several children. And among the descriptions of their offspring, in faded local newspaper birth announcements, Sarah found it. Little Eleanor Thorne, born with her father's striking sapphire eyes. Eleanor Thorne, Thomas's daughter. A direct, documented link to the blue eyes. The gene had continued. This meant that somewhere out there was a branch of their family, descended from Thomas Thorne, carrying the same distinctive blue eyes. The search widened, extending to modern genealogical databases, DNA matching services, and online forums dedicated to Appalachian family histories. It was painstaking work, filled with dead ends and false leads. But Sarah and Emily were relentless, driven by a deep sense of connection to Thomas and a desire to honor Eliza's sacrifice by finally acknowledging his existence. Weeks turned into months, then a breakthrough. A distant DNA match through a genealogical website, a woman named Clara May Thorne, living in a small town in Tennessee. Her family roots traced back to Whisper Creek, West Virginia. And her profile picture, Clara May Thorne, had the most startling, luminous sapphire blue eyes Sarah had ever seen, the exact shade of Lily's. Sarah sent a hesitant message, introducing herself, explaining their family history, the blue eyes, the locket, the lost story of Thomas Thorne. She waited, her heart pounding, for days. Finally, a reply. Clara May was cautious, but intrigued. She confirmed her family had long held a vague, undocumented story of an ancestor, Thomas Thorne, who was said to have been raised by his aunt after his parents died young, and that he had unusually blue eyes for a mountain family. Her family tree, meticulously compiled, confirmed her direct descent from Thomas. A phone call followed, then a video call. Clara May, a warm, jovial woman in her late 60s, listened in stunned silence as Sarah recounted the full, heartbreaking story of Eliza, Nathaniel, and Thomas. Clara May shared her own family stories, passed down orally, of Thomas as a quiet, thoughtful man, deeply connected to the land, who often spoke of a lost mother he vaguely remembered as a beautiful woman who carried a pervasive sadness. It was an emotional, profound connection. Two branches of a family tree, separated for over a century by a desperate secret, were finally coming together. Lily's blue eyes weren't just a genetic marvel. They were a living bridge, uniting two forgotten sides of a complex, beautiful lineage. Chapter 5. The Blue-Eyed Reunion. The connection with Clara May Thorne felt like a miracle, a living testament to the power of hidden truths. The sapphire blue eyes that bound them together weren't just a genetic trait. They were a symbol of shared history, of a love lost and a life lived in secret, finally brought into the light. Sarah's family tree, once so neatly defined, had exploded into a richer, more complex tapestry, woven with threads of sacrifice, loss, and enduring connection. Plans were made for a reunion. Clara May, along with several of her family members, all adorned with the striking, unmistakable sapphire blue eyes, agreed to travel to Richmond. Sarah, Emily, and Lily would host them. It was a momentous occasion, fraught with anticipation and a deep emotional resonance. The day of the reunion dawned bright and clear, the sky a brilliant, almost impossible blue. Fitting, Sarah thought, as she watched the cars pull up the driveway. When Clara May stepped out, her blue eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Sarah felt an immediate, profound sense of connection. It was like looking into a living piece of her grandmother's past, a direct echo of Nathaniel Thorne. Introductions were made, hugs were exchanged, and then Emily brought out Lily. The moment Lily's sapphire eyes met those of Clara May and her family, a collective gasp rippled through the gathering. The resemblance was undeniable, a startling, vivid testament to their shared ancestry. It was as if Thomas Thorne's spirit, his very essence, had somehow passed through generations, emerging anew in the innocent gaze of a baby. Over a grand potluck lunch filled with laughter and stories, Sarah recounted the full story of Eliza, Nathaniel, and Thomas, sharing details from the old photo album, the letters, the census records. Clara May's family listened with rapt attention, many hearing the detailed truth of their own lineage for the first time. They shared their own family stories of Thomas, of his quiet strength, his love for the mountains, his occasional wistful references to a beautiful woman with sad eyes he vaguely remembered from his earliest childhood. It was a powerful, emotional exchange. Old wounds, unknowingly carried, began to heal. Generations of silence were broken. The Jenkins brown eyes were still celebrated, but now the Thorne blue eyes were celebrated too, recognized as an equally important, albeit long hidden, part of their heritage. The family tree was expanded, acknowledged, truly understood for the first time. In the afternoon, as the children played in the yard, chasing each other through sprinklers, Sarah found herself sitting beside Clara May on the porch swing. Eliza, she must have loved him so much, Clara May said softly, her blue eyes distant, lost in thought. To keep his memory alive like that, even as she built a whole new life. And to carry the pain of leaving Thomas, it's a testament to her strength and to their love. It is, Sarah agreed, a profound understanding settling in her heart. And Thomas, he was her constant grief, her beautiful, unbearable secret. Lily's eyes, they are a living tribute to that love, and to Thomas's lost story finally being found. The reunion wasn't just a day, it was a turning point. Both families, now connected, vowed to stay in touch, to integrate their newfound history. Emily was fascinated, inspired to delve even deeper into their genealogy, ensuring Lily would grow up knowing the full, rich, and complex tapestry of her ancestry. Sarah, looking at Lily, now toddling across the lawn, her sapphire eyes sparkling in the sunlight, felt a profound sense of peace. The unsettling mystery that had consumed her for months had resolved into a beautiful, poignant narrative. Her family was not diminished by the secret. It was enriched. It was larger, more resilient, and more deeply human than she had ever imagined. The Sapphire secret, hidden for over a century, had finally come to light, brought forth by the innocent gaze of a newborn. It was a reminder that history, like genes, finds a way to surface, to tell its story, and that sometimes the most unexpected colors can reveal the deepest truths about who we truly are. The Jenkins family now had a new color, a vibrant blue that forever linked them to the mountains of West Virginia, to a lost love, and to a forgotten son, finally, fully acknowledged and cherished.